Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Q Compliance. This happened in the UK. I was in a budget supermarket, well known for its insane checkout speeds. Those who shop there regularly know that when there are more than 2 people waiting at each till, another till will be opened. I had just arrived at the checkout area and noted the queue lengths, so I joined the back of the nearest queue with my basket. As expected, the tannoy announced a new till was opening and I began to make my way there. I reached it at the same time as a chap from the opposite end of the store, who spotted I had far fewer items than he and graciously beckoned me ahead. As I thanked him, a rather entitled woman, precariously carrying lots of items, came storming up behind us both. She pushed past him and physically elbowed me out of the way, slamming her items on the belt in front of me. Barking that she was in a hurry, she glared at the cashier, who had just arrived and still had to lock onto the till, telling him to be quick. The cashier, the chap behind me, and I exchanged glances, but decided not to make a fuss. Clearly, the cashier wasn't moving fast enough for her, so she started fishing around in her purse to get her payment ready. Unfortunately, it was a case of too much haste, and she ended up with coins falling through her fingers and rolling around the floor. This, she felt, was the cashier's fault for not pushing the items along fast enough, and she wasted few words in telling him so. But what she didn't notice while doing so is that one of the pound coins rolled quite close to me. I saw it and the chap behind saw it, but neither of us felt the urge to mention it. In fact, I now had a decision to make. I did not want to help her by telling her, but keeping the coin would be stealing. Then it occurred to me what to do. I moved my foot in front, so the coin was now completely hidden from her sight. I waited a couple of minutes, watching her pay and put her purse away. The chap behind me caught my eye and frowned, but I smiled innocently. The woman began to pick up all her items, juggling them in her arms, and made to leave. At the perfect moment, I caught her attention and pointed out the coin, pushing it towards her with my foot. Watching her bending down at my feet, dropping the same items repeatedly whilst trying to pick up the coin, made up for all her rudeness. Her hair even fell out of her bun all over her face. The cashier was so cheered up he wished her a great day, and the man behind me laughed all the way through. The best part was that, although he knew exactly what I had done, we just smiled at each other and left it at that. The next story is called Waiting for the Boss. I got nosebleed fairly often as a kid, but less so as an adult. One day, while I'm in the office, I get a pretty profuse nosebleed. I try to just plug it up and keep going about my day, but this one was lasting. So I head over to my boss's desk to let her know I was gonna work the rest of the day from home and take care of my nose. She is currently talking with one of my coworkers, and normally I wouldn't interrupt. But given the circumstances, I came up and started with, "Excuse me, boss, sorry to interrupt, but..." Without looking up, she cuts me off and says, "You can clearly see I'm in a one-on-one. Please be polite and wait for me to finish." Alright, you got it. By this time, the tissue I was using to plug my nose was getting redder and redder, and by the time she finally looked up, it wasn't a pretty sight. She asked me why I didn't say something sooner, and I just repeated back to her what she had told me. She sheepishly said, "Obviously, stuff like this would be an exception." I just shrugged and walked back to my desk to get my things. The last story is called A Great Boss. When I turned 14 years old, I got my first summer job and had one of the best bosses I'd ever had. I recently found out that, unfortunately, my mentor and someone I would consider a friend, John, passed away. Although it's been well over 20 years, I still use the lessons learned and the work ethic he passed on to me. Although at times he could be hard, he was more than fair and always did the right thing for those that worked for him. This is the story of John versus the new president. John was the textbook all-American boy. John had attended a prestigious boarding school somewhere in New England and eventually attended Yale back in the late 50s and was not only a scholar but a free sport athlete. He played football, boxed, and was a captain of the track and field team. When this took place, John was still in phenomenal shape for a late 60s, early 70s man. John opted to move out to the country and start a family to follow his passion, which was teaching at the local high school and coaching high schoolers in various sports. As a teacher, he had the summer off and became a lifeguard at the local town beach, eventually becoming the captain of the lifeguards. Over time, he developed standards for the town, county and state lifeguards to pass. He really transformed what was a rec style of the lifeguards into a full-fledged official lifeguard corps, training academy, and set the standards for what is still used today. John was eventually hired to run the lifeguards and manage an entire private beach club instead of working for the town beach. One of the biggest challenges of this, since it was a private beach club, was that John now reported to a president of the beach club, who oversaw how things were run. I started working for John as a helper on the beach and then eventually as a lifeguard. For the first couple of summers, things were great. The president of the beach club took pride in having the best staff and making sure that lifeguards were well paid, and to his credit, safety was their utmost priority. This private beach club certainly catered to the more wealthy clientele who wanted a nicer club instead of going to the public beach. Some of the advantages were the amenities, which were lockers, cabanas, private parking and a very nice restaurant that served great food and drinks. This was one of the few beach clubs that also had the ability to serve alcoholic beverages. One of the good things John had instituted was that any returning member of the staff from the previous summers automatically got a raise. This ensured that staff returned for the next summer, avoiding a lot of retraining and, as you can imagine, growing pains with a new staff. What was even better was that if you returned multiple summers, you still got an additional raise. Most summers this was $1 or $2. Typically, the president of the club serves a term, which is a few years, and when his term is up, a new president is ushered in. Upon taking office, the new president loudly proclaimed that he wanted to ensure that the club had fiscal responsibility. He said he would be personally going over the books with a fine-tooth comb. His first order of business was to cut everyone's pay all the way back to minimum wage and fire most of the lifeguards. Now, as noted above, the staff was there for a long time, knowing most of the members and how to run the place. Prior to the start of the summer, upon learning that their hourly wage would be cut, most of the senior staff immediately left and were quickly hired elsewhere. The lifeguards were spared at the appeal of John to ensure safety, although some senior guards left for other beaches and pools. But John was able to convince the remaining lifeguards that he would take care of things. While John agreed to have the staff take the pay cut, he convinced the new president that any lifeguards with additional certifications would get $2 an hour on top of the base minimum wage. The new president obviously didn't consider that any of these lifeguards would put in the effort or if it was feasible to get any certifications in time for the summer season. So he agreed to the plan. As you can imagine, John basically established the process and curriculum for becoming a lifeguard and personally trained and hired most, if not all, the trainers in town and county. John was also a volunteer fireman and knew all the EMS personnel, and not surprisingly had either taught them in school or hired them as lifeguards in their past lives. John quickly called in favors from every trainer and certifier across the county, who were more than happy to repay all the favors John had done for them in the past. Most waived the training fees and expedited the training sessions for the lifeguards, as they wanted to promote safety for the community. Prior to the start of the Memorial Day weekend, all of us lifeguards and new staff were certified in pretty much every single possible certification that existed at the time. I mean, I'm talking crazy complete overkill and unnecessary certifications for a regular lifeguard. The lifeguards not only went back to their original wage, but in most cases went well above what their previous wages were. At 18 years old and back in the 90s, I personally went from making $15 an hour to $27 an hour, all due to the certifications and trainings. It took a month or so for the fallout to happen. While the new president tried to renegotiate on the deal, John was smart enough to have a formal arrangement in place, and there was nothing the new president could do besides moan about it. He ended up resigning his position to spend more time with his family at the beach. We rarely saw him around that summer, and I think he eventually stopped coming altogether, opting to join another club. John made nice with the new president and explained his philosophy on training and keeping staff. The new president agreed, and some of the senior staff ended up coming back with the promise of their original wage. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and would like to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.